Today's the day we're finally going to chat about spending some time with our emotions to better understand why certain things make us feel the way they do. Ever find yourself mid-experience and feel just kind of like a flood of emotions overwhelm you, and you have no idea why you feel the way that you feel in this situation? Ever find yourself easily defaulting into chronic emotional patterns like hopelessness, anxiety, fury, depression, even numbness, without a clue about what the heck just triggered that? I found myself struggling with this very situation this week, and I felt trapped in this emotional cycle. And it was kind of ironic because I was preparing for this episode. And once I found my way through it, I thought, gosh, I cannot wait to share this with my audience on the podcast this week. So if you're ready for an emotional breakthrough, let's jump in with both feet. In today's episode, you'll get a little 411 on how emotional muscle memory works. You'll hear about how I prioritize understanding why I feel the way I feel. And you'll gain some strategies to help you better understand why certain things make you feel a certain way. Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence but feel stuck in a fog of uncertainty? If you're ready to gain clarity on your goals and cut yourself free from the fear, self-doubt, and worry holding you back, this show is for you. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and clarity coach. I help women like you restore their inner worlds and get clear on their goals to confidently fulfill their greatest desires. Ready to restore your inner warrior? Then turn off those distractions and tune in to this next episode. So in previous episodes over the last few weeks, I've kind of said, press the pause button on why. There's often times where why isn't the focus at all, that we need to focus on different things. And I promised that I would come back to this topic and talk about what I believe is the most important reasoning exercises that we can do to improve our quality of life. So as I promised, today's focus is about understanding why we feel a certain way. So why our emotions get triggered a certain way and cause us to feel certain things. So I don't want to turn this into a big science lesson, but I want to try to just bring in a couple scientific elements here that we can build on. And my hope is just to give us just a real basic foundation. Maybe you're a science geek like I am, and you're fascinated with the brain, and some of this will be stuff that is a refresher to you and nothing new. So our brain's limbic system, particularly the amygdala, essentially guides our emotions. It's kind of like this operating system that has some applications and software attached to it. So it's, a way that we're kind of hardwired to begin with, but also a way that we're kind of programmed and hardwired over time. And sometimes these have to be uninstalled, these apps, or we have to go back and rewire some things. And in order to do that, we kind of got to trace our way back to the roots. Where did the wiring begin? Where did the application process start, or where did it come from? It's also like this internal messenger that we have that kind of guides us to interpreting certain experiences. It also alerts us to certain threats that are either based on reactions to our prior experiences or our subconscious beliefs. And I know I'm really, really simplifying this, but I'm trying to just give us a foundation in order to then kind of apply some of these principles. So, in other words, what we tell ourselves based on our memories and our past experiences, beliefs, and all the stigmas that get rooted to these. By our very nature, we're designed to be curious about the reasoning behind things. So it's natural to want to know why something happens a particular way so that we can understand it. We can understand why things work particular ways. And a lot of times, like I've talked about in previous episodes, we get hyper focused on why someone else is acting the way they're acting, or why a situation is happening the way it's happening. Why are these things happening to me? We get focused on all those things, and we hardly, if ever, stop to say, why am I responding this way? Why am I feeling this way? And are these particular emotions being triggered in the first place? Why are these things being teased out of me? And it's interesting because when it comes to like happiness and enjoyment and things that we love, we don't put a lot of thought into it, but we often find ourselves running to it, right? We can't get there fast enough to do the things that bring us pure joy and excitement and happiness and fulfillment. And so we don't often stop to think about why we like those things, although that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. but that's equally important. But what I really want to narrow in on today is what's on the flip side. So when it comes to things that trigger our negative emotions, our fight, flight, or freeze responses, what keeps us running from? What keeps us freezing and shutting down? Or what shakes us up like an agitated beehive? And these are the things that we tend to just run away from or we just don't deal with. And that's why we end up getting kind of overwhelmed because it's this compounded kind of like emotional trauma or these patterns that we definitely had a reaction to them and we store that. Our memory stores it whether we want to or not. But we maybe on the surface are like, I'm not dealing with that, or I don't know how to deal with that, or I don't have time for it, or it's too uncomfortable, or whatever the reasons are. There's lots of different reasons why these things go unresolved. But when they exist and they encroach on our quality of life and they start to wreak havoc in all these different areas of our lives, it's really important for us to kind of take a step back and say, all right, maybe now is a time to figure out why I'm having this particular reaction. And I mean, really, when was the last time you asked yourself, why do I feel this way? When you were in the middle of a situation, or maybe you weren't even in the situation yet, you were approaching the situation, you kind of had this resistance or this like this hopelessness kind of creeping in or this dread kind of creeping in. And you asked yourself, like, why the heck do I feel that way? Or maybe you didn't ask yourself, and those kind of surface reasons that often like quickly just shut it off are usually the ones that aren't even accurate, but the ones that we accept because, again, we just don't want to spend any time here. And so we find ourselves in a vicious cycle of not really understanding the motives and the reasoning behind why we feel certain ways. And as long as that remains that way, we'll continue to get triggered into those same cycles. So today, my hope is that I can help you get out of some cycles that you want to get out of. And as I was thinking about this topic over the last week, I started thinking about like, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to share with him? I have so many examples of this in action. And I even reached the recording date and I was like, oh my God, I still don't have the story that I want to talk about today. I had a few in mind, but I was like, you've got to make a decision. And I was kind of standing there and I was getting ready. And I was like, this dread was starting to like bubble up about the actual podcast. So here I was, like, kind of like, dreading the thought that I have to still finish planning out some of the things that I want to like highlight today and I have to record it and then I have to produce it where I have to go back and edit it, put everything together in all of its right places in the video format, and then I have to convert these files, then I have to upload them everywhere, create the media content that goes with it, and it's overwhelming. And my first thought was, oh my God, I thought I was going to like this podcasting thing and I did like it at first, but like God, I'm just really maybe I just don't like podcasting. Maybe podcasting isn't my thing. And then it was like, it's a part inside of me that was like, that's not true. That voice of reason that's like, wait a minute, that's not true. You love to speak, you love to teach, you love to talk about these things. So it can't be that. So dig a little bit more here. What is it that's motivating these emotions and these reactions? Like, why are you reacting this way? And I started to think, like, I didn't have the answer, but sometimes we have to like retrace our steps. And when we retrace our steps and we take a few steps back, and we take that psychic distance, but also go back into the experience, we often can discover all types of things and rather quickly. So it's not like you have to be like, oh my God, I've been at it for weeks trying to figure out, this one answer. Is we often get led very quickly to the answers that we seek. And in that understanding, we're able to really quickly turn something around and get a handle on our emotions and bring them back to that place of happiness and peace and joy and fulfillment and all those things that we actually want the experience to elicit. And so I found myself as I was going backward thinking, like, okay, what's going on here? And several months ago, I changed the recording date. I found myself like, and it was a very temporary thing. We were entering into the holidays. I was about to travel. And I was like, gosh, I can't get stuff done during the week. I was teaching at the time. I was like, so I really have to save this for the weekend. And I originally tried to change it to a Friday, but then I realized, like, oh, the week was getting away from me. So maybe I should change it to Saturdays. And then that I can continue to block off Friday as my recording day, and maybe I can even edit that day and all this stuff. So originally, that's what I started doing, and it was working for a little bit. And then I went away and the holidays happened, and you know how chaotic the holidays are and how often we just feel ugh, when we come out of them. And I found myself like, okay, now it's on Saturdays, and I was like pushing the podcast stuff to the end of the week. And I did have justifiable things in the work week, but then what I started doing was it just started landing on Saturdays, where you're going to do everything on a Saturday. And Saturdays are like a sacred day for me and my family and my friends and loved ones. So Saturday is like the biggest day that most of my friends and family and like people I love spending time with, they have time off. So they're always inviting us to do stuff. And I'm always like, I can't. I don't know if I can. I have to get my podcast stuff done. And they're always yelling at me, but I'm literally like, I found myself just trapped in this space where I was like, for weeks now, I'm like, I need to change the date. Like, I need to change this around. There's no reason why I have it on Saturdays anymore. Fridays for me, maybe your Fridays look like this too, are this day that like so many things in the week get pushed to Friday. And because so many people do not work on the weekends for certain professional things, I find myself having to wrap up a lot of things. And so I spend the greater bulk of my day on Friday doing that. And then I get to the evening and I'm like, oh, should I make dinner for the family and then go record? And then I have two of my adult daughters living with me right now. And so they come home and they want to talk to me. They haven't talked to me all week and they want to talk to me. And they just sit down and camp out next to me and they're like, let me tell you the whole long version of my week, or let me pick your brain about something. And I love that time. And I found myself on Fridays and Saturdays, because it was rolling into Saturdays also, they were like, we can't wrap our head around why mom is like inaccessible on Saturdays. It's been a long time since I had a job that really pulled me away from the house on Saturdays because, again, for decades, it's been like this sacred day. It's just been like a very big social day. And so, I was like feeling also not just the dread of like, leading up to like, oh my God, I've got to deal with the podcast, which again, once I got alone with those emotions, like, what, why are you resenting that? I started to realize, like, oh my gosh, this resentment and these emotions, this dread and this overwhelm and this feeling of like hopelessness, and I'm never going to get through all this stuff, and feeling the guilt of feeling bad about telling my loved ones, you can't talk to me right now. I'm not accessible right now. And when you work in your house and you really don't have a lot of places that you can go and hide, it's hard for your family members to kind of understand when they leave the house to go to work that, like, hey, there's a lot of things in your workday that just happen out there in the open in the house. And so I found myself like, oh my God, I would hear them pull into the driveway or the garage, and I'd be like, oh, they're here and I have all this stuff to do. And then I would just feel these emotions start to bubble up. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I love hearing about my daughter's days and weeks and their issues or their friends' issues. Like, that's one of the things that drew me to starting this podcast and helping women like you try to work through your emotions or work through your situations and how to navigate certain experiences. And so I was like, gosh, like there's just this compounded situation here. And the more I took steps away from it, the more I realized, like, oh my God, I have got to get this off the weekends. I have to move the podcast when it releases so that it forces me to get into a workday routine that I have to do the recording and the editing and all that stuff at a totally different time earlier in the week. I'm like, let me go back and revisit my show over the last 11 months. Let me go back and visit it. And what I started to realize when I even looked at the analytics and the listening stats was that Saturday is the least listened to day. And so I was like, okay, so I tried to do something to be convenient for myself, which has just been a total drag. And then it's not even beneficial to my audience because people like to listen to the show typically on Tuesdays. So I am going to move the show back to Tuesdays. So after the holiday, starting in June, the first week of June, the episodes will be on Tuesdays. So this is a holiday week. So next week there will not be an episode, and then there will be one on Tuesday, and we'll try it out. Again, you can try something out, and that might not work either, but I really believe that I can make it work now, and I can reclaim my weekends. I just had a friend invite me to do something, and I'm literally like, I can't. And she's like, I'm so tired of you telling me you can't do anything on Saturdays. We used to hang out all the time on Saturdays with them. And so I said, this is the last Saturday. I promise I'm changing it. And she just was like, so like applauding emojis. Like, I'm so excited that you're finally changing the date because I miss seeing you on Saturdays. So At a really basic level here, we have to spend a little bit of time understanding the reasoning behind our emotional reactions because this allows us to be more informed about the decisions that we make moving forward. So sometimes we can just think about like, oh, I don't need to spend a lot of time with this. Yeah, I always get like triggered for this or that. And what am I going to do? Like, this is so deeply rooted or whatever. But really, when you think about, your personal success, which is something we talk about a lot in this show, in your future. Like, this is a really interesting and selfish, you're allowed to be selfish, thing to consider when you're considering your personal success and moving forward into the future, is that this is a really important thing that carries into all different areas of our life also. But, when you think about like what motivates, so hopefully you're putting a little bit of thought into decisions that you're making and relationships that you're entering into, any type of relationship, changes that you're making, your living situation changing, all those things. Are you going to go back to college? Are you going to take that new job? Are you going to relocate for a job? Are you going to enter into this relationship? Are you going to take this relationship to the next level? All these different types of situations, we really have to filter through our emotions when we're doing, when we're going through certain interactions, to kind of filter through like what are the unwarranted threats and the valid concerns that we have. So that's really like one really important reasoning behind why, if we can get a little selfish here and a little bit like motivated by our personal success, is that it's not just about like, oh, I have feelings. And a lot of us were raised to like, forget about your feelings. It's not about your feelings. It's very much about your feelings and understanding why they make you do the things that you do, or not maybe make you, why they motivate you to do or react in certain ways. And so when we start to filter through and start to really think about it and break things down, like maybe in real time when we're going through something, or when we self-reflect on something that was so recent that we actually have really good memory about it, it helps us separate those emotions from the experiences and the people involved. And that's really critical. You heard me just tell you how that happened with the podcast experience. Because I was able to separate the podcast and I was able to separate the people, I quickly started to make connections to like what was really motivating these feelings that I was having. And they had very little to do with the people and very little to do with the podcast. It was all about timing. I'm actually kind of excited to start implementing these changes because I can't wait to then sit down and self-reflect on all of the improvements that my just everyday life and interactions will have as a result of just one change. So just think about like it's not a big life-altering change. It's just one change. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but I'm willing to bet that it will work. And I'm willing to bet that there will be like other far-reaching benefits that I can't even predict right now. And that's the beautiful part about making positive changes in our life and having good reasoning behind that. But we have to take the time to really figure out that reasoning. And we have to really take the time to figure out that reasoning because I started out like on the surface like, oh, you hate doing podcasts. And then I was like, wait a minute, what? And then what I realized was, no, I hate giving up this precious time that I spent with loved ones, with hobbies, or just doing what I want to do. Sometimes it's nothing. I want to rot on the couch and binge watch shows. And I gave that all up. And, being able to just kind of look at that and say, okay, I need the sacred time back. You don't hate the podcast at all, really helped me not just deal with the emotions, but help me readjust my perspective in a healthy way and grounding it to reality, to the things that really are, in fact, motivating me. So I want you to try this on your own. This isn't a suggestion to replace professionally guided help, or therapy. So if you have been already working with a professional or you're thinking like maybe it's time to bring in a professional, of course, I want you to get that support. And if you are without resources, I do have resources to share with you. So just pop me a note, a comment in here, and I will be more than happy to send you some resources and places to begin. But, whether you're trying to work it out with support or you're just going to try to do some things on your own, I want you to just do a couple of really simple exercises. They might not be easy. Don't confuse simple for easy. Simple in concept, Maybe it might be a little difficult for you to try to really kind of like sift through some of the garbage on the surface in order to get down into something meaningful. But I want you to ask yourself, why did I just react that way? Or why do I feel this particular way about something? And again, I can't give you the topic. It could be anything, okay? Most of the time, we go through every single day of our lives where we're constantly given opportunities to challenge this very thing. So pick something that's fresh. It could be something that maybe I'm saying this to you and you're listening to it, and now, boom, the very next interaction you walk into, it's fresh on your mind, and you're like, oh my God, I just did that very thing that she was talking about on the show today. Boom, now I'm going to try these things that she's asking me to try. So I want you to think about in real time or maybe in the very near past, is there a recent reaction that you had that just like teased out these negative emotions? And you're just like, what? Where's that coming from? Like, why do I feel that way? Take that. And then really challenge yourself. Like you're asking the question, don't just take the easy answer and be like, okay, I'm done. I say this to my college students in the classroom. A lot of times I give writing prompts in class, and then we share things or we talk about things, we wrestle through the problems together. And a lot of times I'll have like certain students who are like, they did it. I'm like, I'm going to give you guys like 8 minutes. And then I had to start saying, I'm going to give you 8 minutes. If you finish this in 1 to 2 minutes, you didn't do it right. So come up and see me. But really, I'm going to tell you the same thing. If your answer is the 2 second one or even the 10 second one, and you're like, good enough, that's not how meditation and reflecting on things works. That's a good start. Like you teased out an answer, but don't always just take the first answer that comes to mind as that's the answer, that's the end all. Sometimes it's the thing that we tell ourselves to justify the actions or dismiss the actions or to shut down the emotions because we're like, dang it, I do not have time for this or I don't have patience for these emotions. So I'm asking you to kind of like, challenge the responses. You're going to get the response like I did. Like maybe you just don't like podcasting. And immediately that surprised me. And it kind of shocked me. And I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't sit right. So take those shocking and surprising answers and really scrutinize them against what you already know about yourself. Nobody knows you the way you know yourself. So scrutinize them. And then if you start to, when you scrutinize it, say things to yourself like, but I really like that, or I really enjoy hanging out with that person, or whatever the answers are, that's like the clue where you go, okay, this is a clue to keep digging for the real response. And you got to keep sifting and keep digging to really get at sometimes those treasures and the things that you're ultimately after. And you constantly have to keep putting those side by side with what you already know about yourself. You know things about yourself. Sometimes I found this when I sit with a loved one, or I sit in a therapy session, or I sit in a group therapy type of interaction, and you already know something. Like I already know something that's true, and it's being dismissed for whatever reason. I'm dismissing it, or someone else is dismissing it, but I know it. And then somebody in that circle, maybe the leader says, blah, blah, blah. And then you go, right? Because you already knew it. You knew this about yourself already and you were dismissing it. And that would be a whole other thing you could scrutinize is why do I dismiss my real emotions all the time? That might be where you need to start. And the same can be applied about what do you know about situations and what do you know about the people that are involved? Maybe you've had prior interactions with these individuals. And so obviously, if you know individuals or you have a relationship that is longer term, then you can reflect back on what do you know to be true about that person? What do you know to be true about this situation or environment? Not just what do you know to be true about yourself. We have a lot more intel and knowledge than we give ourselves credit for. If we can circle back around to where we started today, the brain is really a powerful thing and it's smart. We just have to come in and we just have to exercise it a little bit more and use it to our advantage. You're going to do all these activities. And then if and when you discover some unresolved emotions or trauma triggers, you have to decide to plan out how to deal with them. So you may have heard me talking in previous episodes. I do have one of my books is a self-help book, Warrior Sister Cut Yourself Free, and links to the book are in the show notes below. But I want you to consider if this is something that you're like, oh, I would really benefit from some self-guided help here. I dedicate like a third of the book to this very topic, to kind of like figuring out how to work through your emotions and the triggers and kind of understanding why you operate a specific way. So if you're looking for a little bit of self-guided help on how to kind of like tease out the emotions and figure out the triggers, you might want to check out the book. I hope that you're encouraged by today's episode. And I also hope that you will try out some of these things that we talked about today, this week, or the very next time you get blindsided by your emotions being triggered. Because deep down inside there, you really do know yourself better than anybody else. And you need to give yourself a chance to kind of find a way to these answers, because even a really good therapist or good support circle can only guide you also. Ultimately, you have to be willing to keep kind of like going deeper into that emotional space. And of course, having as much support as you need along the way, but you are the person who really knows the way in. And once you realize why those emotions are hardwired or they have operating systems the way they do, you can then bring in the right operating systems or bring in the right hardwiring, kind of rewiring elements to kind of reprogram your emotional well-being. So until we see each other next week, remember, starting in June, after the holiday, new episodes will come to you every Tuesday. Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, follow my channel and share it with friends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. And if you're ready to get clarity and big picture vision on your goals, consider booking a one-on-one coaching session with me. Find a link in the show notes below to book a session. And as you go through your week, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Ciao.